Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey into British politics, economic thinking, and how history clashes with today's challenges. Our source for this is a pretty in-depth chat with Lord Christopher Monckton, featured on trigonometry. The article's called Lord Monckton, The Story of Margaret Thatcher, Climate Change, and the Conservative Party.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground. And our mission, really, for you listening, is to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising bits, from Monckton's perspective. We're looking at Thatcher, climate stuff, immigration, conservative values, what he thinks went wrong, and what lessons he pulls from the past.
Okay, right. Let's get into it. So we're diving straight into his critique of net zero climate policies. He controversially calls it nut zero. He definitely has strong feelings here.
Oh, absolutely. He directly blames those policies for the crazy energy prices in the UK. But the really interesting part of his argument, it's about alleged censorship. He thinks dissenting views aren't getting heard in the UK media.
Right. And he points the finger at Ofcom, the regulator. Calls it the Office for Communism, which is quite a statement.
It is. He claims Ofcom basically said the science is settled, and that legally forces the media to show only one side. He argues this breaks a fundamental legal idea nemo iodex in causa sua, which basically means you can't be the judge in your own case. So he's saying Ofcom loses its authority to regulate this debate because it's already taken a side.
Okay, so what's the implication then for just, open discussion? Why does he think regulators are trying to narrow the story like this? It sounds like he sees a bigger issue.
He really does. And to get why, you have to look at his background. His time working for Margaret Thatcher is, it's absolutely key to how he sees things now.
Right. That's a pretty unique perspective, working inside her government. What does he actually say about her?
He paints this picture of her just deeply understanding economics, not just getting briefings, He says she personally read and marked up books by Hayek, Adam Smith, Ricardo, Bastiat, Friedman, the big names. She wasn't just skimming, she was really digging into the theory herself.
So she had this solid intellectual base guiding her. How did that play out in practice in her government?
Well, it meant she had very clear ideas, and she could spot economic policies she thought were just plain wrong. He tells this story about a top civil servant calling her government morally good because apparently nobody there meant harm. Monckton insists their goal was genuinely to help working people, owning homes, owning shares, choosing schools.
And he mentions she actually started paying down the national debt. He even speculates quite boldly that if she'd had another 4 years, maybe income tax could have been scrapped altogether.
It's a huge what if, isn't it? And this leads straight to his core frustration, which is why he feels the modern Conservative Party has, betrayed that legacy. He thinks they ditched her principles just for political gain.
That's a strong word. Betrayal. Does he give specific examples of how they betrayed it beyond just a general feeling?
Yeah, he definitely sees it as a philosophical U-turn. I mean, look at net zero, which he obviously detests. And also immigration policies. He sees these as completely opposite to her way of thinking, which actually leads us nicely into the next point. So building on that idea of lost principles, he turns to immigration. And again, he draws a really sharp contrast with the Thatcher years.
Okay, what's his take here? He's known for strong views on this.
Very strong. He throws out some big numbers. He mentions 45,000 people arriving illegally by boat this year and over 700,000 net migrants last year. That's not even counting the boats.
And he puts that 700,000 number next to the UK's birth rate, around 600,000 live births. His warning is pretty stark. Major demographic shifts, major economic strains.
Exactly, and this is where it gets quite politically pointed. Monckton claims immigration is often driven by politics. He suggests left-wing parties want it because, he argues, first-generation immigrants tend to vote left. He even compares it to the U.S. under Biden, saying open borders are more about political strategy than, say, humanitarian concerns.
Then he contrasts that with Thatcher. He describes her stance on illegal immigration as incredibly tough. Arrive uninvited, you're detained, you're deported, full stop, a very clear deterrent.
Right. And Monckton claims this approach basically stopped illegal arrivals during her time. He sees the current situation as, political weakness in comparison.
So this theme of decline from Thatcher's era continues. He then makes this really big claim about Tony Blair's government.
Yeah, he argues Blair basically tore up over 1,000 years of British constitutional tradition, a huge assertion.
How? I mean, how does he say that actually happened? What changed?
His argument is that power shifted, subtly but significantly. More power to the civil service, less real authority for the elected ministers who are supposed to be accountable. He calls Parliament a mere doomer now, like it's just there for show, mostly powerless.
Wow, a mere doomer.
And he doesn't stop there. He also takes aim at the European Court of Human Rights. He describes it as communist-dominated and says it has far too much influence over British law, eroding sovereignty.
So the picture Monckton paints is one of democratic accountability just draining away. Power moving from elected people to, well, unelected officials in international courts.
Precisely. And connecting it all back, he constantly sets Thatcher's leadership informed. Based on principles, he argues against what he views as today's sort of ideologically driven incompetence, both in politics and the civil service. He really portrays Thatcher as this thinker leader, someone who wasn't just signing off on things, but actually understood the complex ideas behind the policies.
And because she was so hands-on, he says that's how they managed that rare thing, actually shrinking the national debt. He sees her government as technically sharp and morally driven, focused on real results for people. Now, the conversation wasn't all high politics and economics. There were a few lighter moments, right? Giving a glimpse of Monckton himself.
Yeah, a couple of interesting tangents. They briefly talk about tattoos, strangely enough. Monckton jokes about having skulls inked all over, but then, classic Monckton. He says it's important to add intellectual stuff too, like math, puzzles mixed in.
Right, a unique combination.
Definitely shows his personality. And they also mention Joe Rogan jokingly calling him a young whippersnapper, but then seriously praising his podcast success. It felt like a nod, really, to platforms like Rogan's, and maybe like this one too, that champion free discussion, which of course is a huge theme for Monckton himself.
Absolutely. Well, what a fascinating deep dive into Lord Monckton's world. His views on Thatcher, the current political scene, his really strong critiques on climate, immigration, how institutions have changed.
Yeah, he definitely holds up that Thatcher era as a kind of gold standard for Britain, competent, moral, economically sound. And he sees today's leadership as, well, a failure to live up to that. Ultimately, his answer seems to be more open debate, more intellectual honesty, to fix what he sees as the problems of modern politics.
So for you listening, maybe something to think about. In this age of, well, information overload and very strong opinions everywhere, how do you find that balance between listening to experts, sticking to principles, and still allowing for, a wide range of views? And how does looking back at past leaders like Thatcher through Monckton's lens anyway, help us think critically about the leaders and the governance we have right now?